What is mysticism? We talk a lot about mysticism here on Mythical Minnows, but what actually is it? We might want to start with the word itself. The modern English word mysticism is derived from the old French word mystique. This usually means something that is full of mystery and is itself derived from the Latin mysticus. These terms themselves are grounded in the Greek. Charles Stein explains how ta mysteria, meaning mysteries, is derived from the Greek mysterion, meaning secret rite. Now this comes from two linked verbs, which I'm not going to try to pronounce, with the first meaning to conceal or to hide, and the second meaning to initiate. However, looking at the etymology of the word, meaning where it comes from, is not always the best way to go about explaining a modern concept. However, in this case, we do get a snippet of what mysticism might mean because of the associations with things that are hidden, that might be difficult to put into words, and things that are revealed in highly charged situations. When looking at ancient forms of religiosity, we find these terms linked to initiates being initiated into mystery cults, whether that's the cult of Isis, the Eleusinian mysteries, what have you. And while this association with secret rites is still going to remain important when it comes to more modern forms of mysticism, think secret organizations, mysticism is going to become its own beast. Something else that we need to keep in mind is that the term mysticism was swimming in highly Christian and even Abrahamic and Platonic traditions as it developed. However, here the word is being used as an adjective, mystical, instead of a noun, mysticism, that will develop later. Mystical here describes a way of doing theology or religion. The way that sacred scripture is read or rites performed, like the Eucharist, they are said to reveal the hidden mystical reality behind these practices and forms of religion. So this method of revealing the hidden nature of scripture, liturgy, or even contemplative experience is said to lead to some form of gnosis or realization. And I think here the shift from adjective to noun is where we can also make the important note that mysticism is a highly modern concept that the first scholars of mysticism are going to associate with experience. For more on that, watch the previous episode of TeaSoteric about William James. Instead, Bruce Millam argues that here, medieval Christians, for example, expected experience, church, tradition, and scripture to agree. It's not that they didn't have mysticism, it's that mysticism was still linked to liturgical and religious practice on the outside, something that William James actually kind of pushed against. We can find writings that are mystical and called as such by ancient church fathers, whether it's Pseudo-Dionysius, whether it's Clement of Alexandria, whether it's Origen of Alexandria. However, it's going to take a while before mysticism, as we kind of perceive it today as some form of experience, is going to fully mature into what we know today. Now, this is a massive subject, as you can probably suspect. So instead of trying to shove everything into one episode, we're going to be looking at the subject as we go along. However, I want to leave you with some words by one of the most prominent scholars of Christian mysticism, Bernard McGinn. In his massively important The Essential Writings of Christian Mysticism, Bernard McGinn writes, although the word mysticism is fairly recent, created in the 17th century and not popular until the 19th, the adjective mystical has been widely used among Christians since at least the 2nd century CE. Christians used mystical to refer to the secret realities of their beliefs, rituals, and practices, especially to the mystical meaning of the Bible. That is, the inner message about attaining God that may be found beneath the literal sense of the scriptural texts and stories. So as I said, as we go along, we're going to encounter the word and the concept of mysticism, and it's going to be a sort of chameleon concept, similar to spirituality, religion, esotericism. All these words are very, very fluid. Sometimes we'll directly look at mysticism and see how self-proclaimed mystics, or people who were later assumed to be mystics, will approach texts like scripture, for example, or their own experience. And sometimes we will be looking at it kind of indirectly and kind of projecting our modern conceptualizations onto these thinkers and mystics. Other than that, I hope you enjoyed another episode of TeaSoteric and hopefully see you very soon.